So last week we did the Avodat Tamid, the Torot in chapter 6 and 7, starting with Torah Olam, Mincha, etc., with the whole summary at the end, and we talked about the word Torah. Today I'm going to take that same unit and as a springboard to talk about the idea of a Korban Tamid, because it's this week and next week's already going to be, it's already in Kislev. So our topic is Sefer Vayikra, but I want to focus this week and next week on something that relates to the menorah and hence Hanukkah, and why the menorah becomes a symbol by Sheni. So um, last week we talked about the Olat Tamid in the beginning of the Torah unit, and today sure we're going to take the concept not just of the Korban Tamid, but Avodat Tamid in general, what's going on in the Mishkan, and why, what's the meaning of the Tamid and what they represent and what they're all about, and it'll take us to the menorah. Now, just before I look at my source sheet, I'll throw out a question or two. Which vessels in the Mikdash have an Avodat Tamid? You follow my question? Like the Mizbeach we saw, the outer Mizbeach has a daily Korban every day and every evening. There's a Korban Tamid, which is Keneged nowadays, our Tefillot. But any other vessel in the Mikdash have a Avodat Tamid?
The menorah.
Yeah, the menorah, and then that's called the Ner Tamid, on the or the Lalot Ner Tamid. We'll see that. That's how often is that? Once a day or twice a day?
In the evening and in the morning.
So that's a little tricky because you light it once a day from the evening to the morning. But if you follow at least Chumash, when you come in the morning, if the menorah is still lit, you extinguish it and clean it. You clean up the wicks, put new wicks on, fill up the oil, and set up the menorah in the morning, but you don't light it. You come in the evening to light the menorah. There's what's called hatavat nerot in the morning, and halat nerot or hadakat nerot in the evening. And according to Chumash, the candle should burn from erev ad boker, from evening to morning. Now, just for the fun of it, is that phrase, the erev ad boker or something like that, ever found earlier in Chumash?
Yeah.
When's the first time we have the concept of erev and boker in Chumash?
Creation.
Where in creation do we have erev and boker? Every single day, correct? Now, does the creation story have anything to do with light and or? Okay, you're all smiling. You're catching on. Yeah. You can't miss the fact that there must be some connection between the avodah of lighting the menorah and the story of creation. Now, we've been focusing on the connection between Har Sinai, or revelation, and the Mishkan. So today I want to focus not only on revelation in the Mishkan, also creation in the Mishkan. And again, to try to focus on what's the meaning of Am Yisrael visiting God in the Mishkan. What's the idea of this connection between God and his people? How it affects us as a nation, how it affects us as individuals, how much it relates to revelation or Har Sinai, how much it relates to creation, the more universal theme. So keep that in mind. Now, any other vessel that has an avodat tamid?
The shulchan, perhaps, which has the
shulchan has, but not every day. How often does the shulchan have an avodat? There's lechem on the shulchan all the time, but when do we change it?
Weekly.
And what's the phrase? We'll see Yom HaShabbat, Yom HaShabbat. Now, does that idea of the idea of Shabbat, does that come up in creation? Okay, I'm just asking real easy questions today. So there's another thing. Now,
the summit of creation.
Okay. What other clean the Mikdash has anything to do with what other vessel do we have in the Mikdash? We have the Shulchan and the Menorah.
Mizbach HaZahav.
Mizbach HaKtoret, okay?
Mizbach HaKtoret.
Yeah. Does that have a daily avodah?
Every day, morning and evening.
Morning and evening. But that doesn't seem to match anything in creation. Not as obvious as the Shulchan and the Menorah. We'll try to explain why. Any other avodat tamid?
Well, I'm wondering about Vayachulu Hayamim. Vayachulu, could it mean, and the days become Kalim?
Trumat Hadeshen?
I'm saying.
So Trumat Hadeshen, we'll see in a minute, it has to do with the Mizbeach.
The days.
I'm talking about, without drashot, just on the simple level, I'm looking for avodat tamid, and basically we covered all the kelim in the Mishkan, didn't we? Remember how to match it up with your face? Remember your eyes is the menorah, Mizbach Toret, the smell. What else was there? Taste, I guess maybe is the shulchan. Any other avodat, and then the menorah, I guess is I guess we remember we talked about achila maybe. But either way, those are all the vessels in the mikdash. How about the aron itself? That's in the kodesh. But all the kelim in the kodesh have an avodat tamid. In the chatzer, the mizbeach has avodat tamid, and the kelim inside. How about the aron?
Once a year.
Yom Kippur.
Yeah, but there's nothing. We bring something to it maybe once a year, but there's really it's not like the regular. It's not a regular vessel. What's the nafkamina? If the aron is lost, it's not replaced. If I'm not mistaken, there was one aron and that's it. All the other kelim you can make new ones.
It
Remember Chanukah, they made a new
contains
menorah, a new shulchan, a new mizbech. The aron was a one-time thing, and the aron really isn't a kli of the. No, it's not a functioning vessel of the mishkan. The mishkan is a place to put the aron, but the aron has its own identity even without a mishkan. You understand the difference? It's a fundamental difference. I can have an aron, like in Sefer Dvarim, aron for the luchot, and I can carry the aron going to battle, etc. But the aron is not necessary for the function of the mishkan. Now, the place to put the aron is in the mishkan, but I can have a mishkan without an aron. I can have a temple without an aron. All by Sheni, we had a temple with no aron. So we had the place, but we didn't make a new aron, but because there's no daily function of the aron that's necessary to run the temple. All the other vessels, we have avodat tamid on them. Now, the place to put the aron is in the mikdash, but it's very different than the other kelim. Even if we do a avodah in the mikdash once a year on Yom Kippur, it's not like the menorah. We actually light the menorah or put something on the kaporet. We throw blood in front of the kaporet on the aron. We don't do something on the aron itself. Now, why that is, if we have time, we'll get to later on.
The aron contains edut, which needs to be tamid.
We'll talk about keep that in mind between edut and tamid. Keep that together. Edut can mean witness. Edut can mean later. Edut often can mean laws. We'll see how the word will be important soon, and Chumash will make a big deal about it. So that's the idea of avodat tamid. Now I want to begin where we began last week with the first section of chapter 6, because unlike the other Torot, like how to bring a chatat, how to bring an asham, how to bring a olah, etc., and how to bring a asham and a shlamim, etc., which is very detailed. When it comes to the olah, we just talk about the olah tamid pretty much. So we're going to read it again just to refresh our memory, and then use it and try to understand what's so important about this olah tamid. Let's take a look. So I'll share my screen now and my source sheet. And my apologies today. I made my source sheet just in Hebrew. I had a computer problem, so I just used the Hebrew, but it's easy Hebrew, and I'll translate. This is the beginning of chapter 6. Remember, this law is that the Kohanim need to know, as opposed to the people. Zot Torah Olah. And instead of talking about the regular Olah of the Yachid, of the individual that the Kohen brings, we're talking about the Korban Tzibor. Hi ha'olah al mokdal mizbeach kol halayla, beish hamizbeach tukad bo. I'm going to highlight a phrase that comes up a lot. The eish, the fire on the mizbeach, is going to be kindled on the olah. In other words, it seems to be that the main thing is the eish and not the olah. Hope that's clear. I want to show you there's an emphasis in the Torah Olah. The goal of the Torah Olah is to have the eish, the fire burning all the time. Like tukad is like to be kindled. So the Kohen has to wear special clothing when he goes up. He takes what's called Trumat Hadeshen. Every morning there's all this ashes. He has to take him down, and then he puts on other clothing. We'll leave that alone for now. And then listen carefully. That's the avodah. And now we're making two statements. The eish al mizbeach tukad bo lo tichbe. It's the same thing we said before, that eish al mizbeach tukad bo. On top of the fact that the olah is going to kindle the fire on the mizbeach, we have another law that this eish on the mizbeach, which the olah supplies meat for, should not be extinguished. Okay, lo tichbe. Uvia olah kohen itzim baboker raboker. We need to put lumber on it, or firewood on it every single morning. Besides the korban, we brought special wood every morning. called Korban Haitzim every day. And on that wood that we put on the Mizbeach, then we place the Olah on the wood, on the Mizbeach, and we put on it the Chavei Shlamim. That's the Chalavim of not just the Olah goes on there, also the Chelev of the Shlamim. In other words, if you remember, on the Mizbeach, what goes on the Mizbeach? We sprinkle the blood on the side, on the corners, but what's burnt on top of the Mizbeach, the entire Olah, we cut the animal into different parts, and every other Korban, a Chatat, Asham, and Olah, and a Shlamim, the meat is eaten either by the Kohanim or the owners, but the Chelev, the fat that surrounds the abdominal cavity, that always goes on the Mizbeach. So that's what's burnt on the Mizbeach. And then we have a summary pasuk, Eish tamid tukal Mizbeach lo tichpeh. Now, why did I highlight it? It's clear that this is totally superfluous, isn't it? We just said the same thing beforehand. Beish Mizbeach tukal lo tichpeh. And then how do we summarize? The same verse, Eish tamid tukal Mizbeach lo tichpeh. There's a need for constant fire on the Mizbeach, but the main thing is the Eish. Now, and it seems that there's a need for have fire burning all the time. Now, we mentioned many times that there's a connection between Har Sinai. Remember, my whole point I try to make over and over again is when you visit the temple, you're remembering the commitment to be God's people at Har Sinai. Therefore, again, in the Kodesh Kodeshim is going to be the Luchot HaEdut, the Aron HaEdut, or the Aron HaBrit, which reminds us of the covenant. In the story of Har Sinai, is there ever a theme of fire anywhere at Har Sinai?
The whole mountain was on fire.
Yeah, you were there, weren't you? You might have forgotten, but
The whole mountain was on fire.
what was on fire?
The whole mountain.
Was on fire. It was like a scary thing, wasn't it? So I'm going to read something I'm going to read Dafka from Sefer Dvarim, the description of Har Sinai from the perspective of the people that Moshe tells over 40 years later in his speech in Har Sinai when he talks about the covenant we made at Har Sinai. Remember, Moshe begins his speech in chapter 5. Hashem Elokeinu diber lanu. Hashem Elokeinu karatim lanu brit b'chorev. God made a covenant with us in Chorev, and we quotes the Ten Commandments, and then it tells the story of what happened afterwards. So listen to the story, and I want to put an emphasis on, from the people's perspective, how central the theme of fire is. Okay. So first of all, in chapter 5 in Dvarim, Moshe tells the Ten Commandments, and that's et advarim me'ela diber Hashem el kachem bahar mitoch ha'esh. You heard these words from the fire. There's Anan and Arafel. We'll go back, and there's a kol gadol, a great voice. At Har Sinai, I'm emphasizing there's a kol, the voice of God, and fire. Okay. Listen carefully to the story. You heard God's voice from the fire, from the darkness, and the mountain is full of fire. All your elders came and gathered, representing you with this complaint. Indeed, God showed us His greatness and His honor. Again, we heard His voice from the fire. This actually should have been in yellow. You'll forgive me. That should have been, I've been trying to make that yellow all along, but you got my point. How can I change the color? I can't change the color now. Too late. Never mind. Okay. Oh, that's not good. Now, now we can see God can speak to man and stay alive. Now they say, if this fire consumes us, if we continue to hear God speaking to us, we'll die. What human, what mortal can hear the voice of God from this fire and stay alive? Therefore, you go closer to hear God, okay? And you speak to us everything that God says, and v'shamanu v'asinu will do nasa v'nishma. Now, did we have any concept of achila in our study of the Torah? When we were studying the first part of Vayikra, I'm sorry, last week we did chapters 5 and 6. Didn't we do a whole section on the word achila, achilat mizbeach? Didn't we emphasize it last week, I think? Let me just show you real fast. I think I have my, let me open up the source sheet from last week. I have it on my computer still. That was chapter 5, 5, okay? I'm sorry, I got to do my share. I'll share my screen again. And Tim 5, here we are. We had the unit, and then I made a big deal about the achila, what we are. We are what we eat, remember? So we had it here we had in the blue, remember? Torah mincha, we had the word achila. Then we had the Kohen eating the mincha. Then we had Torah chatat, achila. Remember achila of the mizbeach, achila of the Kohanim. And Chazal say Kohanim ochlim ubalim mitkaprim. By the Kohanim eating the korban, that brings kapara for the owners. And then what can be eaten, what can't be eaten. And then Torah Hasham, again, what the Kohanim eat and what the owners eat. And then achila of the shlamim. So I just highlighted, see all the blue? Oh, I just had the blue there, just to emphasize the theme of achila by Har Sinai, achila of the korbanot on the mizbeach. So we have achilat korban and we have eshochelet on the mountain. Now, what I should have done, okay, I'll go back to chapter 19, but first I want to talk about the word kol, and then we'll talk about achilat esh. So this kol gadol that we heard at Har Sinai, heard God's voice. Remember Har Sinai, the original covenant? Moshe calls God up in chapter 19 in Shemot, before we get to 10 Commandments, we enter a covenant. He says, Ko tamar lebeit Yaakov, b'tagid ifnei Yisrael. Here's the condition, the proposition to make to the people. Look what I did for you. V'ata'im shamoa tishmu b'koli. I'm making a big deal about listening to the voice of God. So the voice of God is clear, and keep my covenant. Remember Aron Habrit? That will make you my treasured nation, even though I'm the God of all the land. V'atem tilim mamlechet koni v'goy kadosh. The whole theme of Har Sinai is the nation makes a covenant to be a nation obeying God, obeying the voice of God, and keeping His covenant and following His laws. So if my visit to the temple, remember, if the Eish Tamid and the Olah Tamid reminds us of Har Sinai, then it makes sense why we're making such a big deal that we need Eish all the time in Har Sinai. Now let me turn up this share and just go back to something. I really probably should put it on the source sheet. Where else do we have Eish Ochelet? So if I go back to open up a regular Chumash, oh, you guys are on my screen. We don't want that one. No, that's not good. Let me stop that share. We want to open up Tanakh. We'll get it in a second. I'll be posted attendee. 1 second. No, I keep on hitting too many buttons. My mouse. There we go. One more try. Share screen. Post attendee. That's it. Okay. Let's go to Psalms. We don't Psalms. We don't want Psalms. We want the book of Shemot, chapter 19, first of all. Let's see a little more fire. Here we are. Wait, now you can see you see chapter 19? Okay, get ready. Here. Okay, God's going to come down. Here. Har Sinai. Here, 16. It came on the third day. They're all ready for the thing. There's kolot of Rakim anan kaved al har. People were scared. Moshe brings the people to the mountain. Here, verse 18. V'har Sinai ashan kulo. It's full of smoke. B'bnei asher yorad alav Hashem ba'esh. V'yal asher ki eshan akvishan v'echad kol har ma'od. V'avi kol shavar olech v'chazek mod. Then Moshe daber v'li minenu b'kol. So we have the theme of Esh and Kol at Har Sinai itself, already back in Shemot. And then if I go back to the story, the parallel story at the end of chapter 24, when we say Nasa v'nishma, Moshe tells the people all the stories, and they build the Mizbeach, they say Nasa v'nishma. That's all fine. And then we invite up Moshe, Aaron, Nadav and Avihu, the 70 elders. They see the glory of God, etc. And they drink. Then Moshe goes up. And then when Moshe goes up for the first 70 days, Vayam Moshe al-Har v'chastan tahar. Here's what's important. Vayishkom kvod Hashem Har Sinai, 6 days. Here. Umareh kvod Hashem ke'esh ochelet b'rosh hahar le'nei b'nei Yisrael. Do we need more than that? Hope that's crystal clear now. In Har Sinai, right after we said Nasa v'nishma, okay, kvod Hashem is in Har Sinai. Moshe goes up to receive the rest of the laws, to receive the luchot, etc. Remember, Moshe is going up to get the luchot Even and the Torah and the mitzvah, etc., which later is going to be in the Aron. And then from the perspective of the people, and that's why I'm pointing out the perspective of the people all the time, Umareh kvod Hashem ke'esh ochelet b'rosh hahar le'nei b'nei Yisrael. Vayim Moshe b'toch ha'anan, and Moshe is there for 40 days and 40 nights. So bottom line, what I'm trying to get across is, when we visit the temple and see Eish Ochelet, remember? We have a constant fire consuming our korbanot on the Mizbeach, is supposed to remind us of this Eish of Har Sinai, the fire of the experience, which led to our fear and respect and awe, and our desire to learn Torah, but not directly, but indirectly through Moshe, through the Luchot. So again, if I want to understand why is there an emphasis in the Korban Tamid on a regular basis, why is there so much Eish on the Mizbeach, and why is the kol so central to that story? And why does it have to be constant fire? Remember, it can't be extinguished because our covenant, it relates to the eternity of the covenant, the eternal nature of the covenant, and that's the word tamid. Remember, tamid, God's with us all the time. Now, can you think of another time you have the word tamid, not in relation to fire, not in the Mikdash, but outside the Mikdash, but in the land of Israel? Anything come to mind? Sort of a quiz question.
There are
Amish.
chokim that are tamid.
But I want the word tamid in something that's not fire, but it's almost parallel. It relates to fire, maybe in an opposite way. That relates to the land of Israel.
תמיד עיני השם עליה.
Yafeh מאוד, okay? That's what I was hoping for. And we just know this because we've been saying Talamatar now already in Israel for a couple of how much? Almost a month already. And you guys are saying it next week, right? Your Talamatar, I think, December 5th or 4th or 5th.
The
Those in
fourth.
Chutzpah.
Yes.
Either way.
Starts
In
on
Sefer Devarim,
Thursday.
right before the Shema, in chapter 11, when Moshe is telling the people, you're about to enter Israel, but the land of Israel is different than Egypt. We have a beautiful line. Moshe says as follows, right before the Vayim Shemoah. What's it say? Ki ha'aretz asher ata b'sham l'rishta, the land you're going now to inherit, is not like Egypt, where you watered your field with your foot, basically with the irrigation ditches coming from the Nile. The land which you're going to is a land of hills and valleys. Limtar shemaim tishtamaim, you get water from heaven. And eretz asher Hashem Elokecha doresh ota tamid, God looks after it. Tamid all the time. Enei Hashem Elokecha ba mereshit hashana barakrit shana. So we have the theme of God is always watching over the land. And what tool does God use if we keep the mitzvot? Now, if we keep the mitzvot, we come to the Mikdash, we see the Eish Tamid on the Mizbeach to remember our dedication to God, our covenant with God, to be His people. And then if we keep God's mitzvot on the land that we're living, when we leave the Mikdash, we go to the land, if we keep the mitzvot in our society, then how does God reciprocate? Then Natati mitar tzchem beito, Yirel Makosh, then I'll give you rain at the right time, the beginning, the rains at the beginning of the season, and I'll bless your produce, etc. And you have prosperity, and you can use prosperity to serve God. If you don't listen, God will get angry, etc., and will use the water. So it's interesting that we have matar tamid or enei Hashem tamid, effect which influences the matar in the land, the rain, outside the Mikdash, and in the Mikdash we have this Eish Tamid. Remember water and fire. If you remember, that's called Eliel as opposed to Elisha. But remember, my theme I'm trying to show you, we go to the temple to leave. You go to the temple, you don't leave. Do we explain, I think we related to Yaakov's dream or not? Just from last week's Parshat Shavua, in case you forgot. We did this probably a long time ago, sometime. Remember in Yaakov's dream, we just read yesterday, I think, yesterday on Shabbat. Yaakov sees in his dream this ladder with Malachim connecting between heaven and earth. And then it comes to the Makom, down on the ground. From this place, God tells Yaakov, Ufratze Yama v'kim b'tzafon v'negba. You go out in all four directions. And this is Vayazarcha kafar aretz. Your zera will be like the fire of the land. So the blessing to Yaakov, which is like the blessing Abram got in Beit El back in Perikut Gimel and Bereshit after Lot left, we had God told Abram, lift up your eyes and look in all four directions, and your children will be like Afar Haaretz. That was the Beit El blessing, and the same thing Yaakov gets now when he's in Beit El. In fact, he calls it Beit El and promises to build a temple one day. So the concept of a temple begins in Beit El. That's what the word means. Now, the danger of a house of God, probably this is the most important point I want to get across. I might use it connected to Parshat Shavua. There's always houses for God. Every religion has. The danger of a house for God is that God is in that house, but only in that house. We call it God in a cage. That's a disaster. God is everywhere. I need a place to connect to God. So the idea of a temple is I need some vertical connection between heaven and earth to bring God down to earth, to connect to earth. And that place, that special place, there's God here. But from this place, God can spread out in all four directions. Not limitation, but emanation. It's not that God needs a place to live. We need a connection to God. We want God to spread out on all four corners of the earth. But what do? We have one place that represents a connection between heaven and earth. And from that one place, we spread out in all four directions. Now, I understand that's what Chazal are saying. Remember, we give the analogy of our offspring. God tells Avram, and now with Yaakov, will be like Afar Haaretz. Earlier, God said, Kochvei Hashamayim, that's beautiful, and Chol Hayam, after the Akedah. But in Beit El, the imagery is Afar Haaretz. And Afar relates to man's creation, doesn't it? Because how did God make man? Vayitzar Hashem Elokim et Adam Afar min Adama. Now, if you remember Rashi on that pasuk, y'all remember what Rashi says? Where did God get the Afar from when he made man? Remember, there's two opinions. One is from Makom HaMizbech, Mizbech Adam Ataseli. So from the place of the Mizbech where man gets kapara, that's God got the Afar from the place of the Mizbech on Har Havayit. The other possibility is from all four corners of the earth. They are from all four corners. So the rabbis are onto that, aren't they? Now, the fact, that whole idea that God makes man with the ability to connect to God, because man's working for God. He's B'Tselem Elokim. So in the creation of man, in order for man to fulfill his goal, he needs to connect to God. And then the Mikdash is the place where he connects to God. And from that point, he spreads out. And that has to be the key purpose, again, of a Mikdash and later of a Beit Knesset, where you connect to God on a daily basis, tamid. But the idea is to leave. And that's why I like the idea if we go from fire to water. If you know your Eliyahu stories in Sefer Melachim, Eliyahu is always fire, Elisha is always water. That's whole share in Sefer Melachim. But fire and water, that's not just in Judaism. That's in all ancient philosophy. So there's two of the four. I forgot what the four are, but fire and water are two of them, aren't they? I guess there's wind and I forgot my Greek
Earth,
philosophy.
that's man. Yeah.
What? What's the fourth one?
Afar,
Is water, fire?
Earth. Earth.
And earth. Okay, actually,
Yeah.
yeah.
We just need wind.
Yeah. Okay. I should remember that. Got to Chazara. Now, okay, now let's get back to our source sheet. But I hope my point's clear about how important this wording is with the Avodat Tamid. Now that explains the Mizbeach, but we bring the korbanot on the Mizbeach. The Mizbeach is a korban of the people. Remember? We give the money for it. Maybe we have time, we'll see it in Parshat Pinchas as well. Let's go now and see where we have other Avodat Tamid, back to our source sheet. Okay, now, we did the Olot and Shlamim, we read Shemot 24, 3-8, with Olot and Shlamim at Har Sinai. Okay, now, this Avodat Tamid, we're going to find it later on. I'm going to go back to these psukim in a minute. But what are we told after the 7 days in Miluim, which we gave 2 weeks ago? Remember, that was the inaugural ceremony that made the Kohanim and dedicated the Mizbeach. This will take us right to Hanukkah later. It says, B'zeh asher taseh Mizbeach. That was after we have the 7 days in Miluim and the inaugural Korbanot. Remember, we had the Chatat Olah and the prototype Shlamim. Now, every day we bring a keves. Remember? 2 kvasim, Shnaim Tamid. Et keves echad taseh b'boker, et keves taseh ben harbaim. Sounds creation, doesn't it? By Yervai Boker, Yom Achad, Yom Sheni, etc. Now, Isaron Soled, B'luv Hashemen, together with fire. Now, we have animals from day 6, and flour from day 3. Remember 3 and 6? Now, 3 and 6 connect to man, going back to creation. Now, we talk about why dafka these things, of all things from day 3 and 6. Et keves taseh ben harbaim again. We did Breach Nichoach and Noach way back. Remember the whole theme of God can learn from his mistakes, and we can learn from our mistakes like God did. And God remembers that we're only human, and we're Yetzir Adam Ram Menurav, and the whole theme of Tshuva. Then we have Olat Tamid L'Dorotechem Petach Ol Moed. Now I'm going to go back to these psukim in a minute. I'm going to show you something. I want to show the connection between the Shekhinah on Har Sinai and the Korban Tamid, and I want to prove it. No, I gave it thematically. I want to show you Chumash screams it when you study the Mishkan. Okay, so we have to see where we find the other Avodat Tamid, but now we need to do a Here, I'll go back to this in a minute. I'm going to jump ahead to this. Last year, almost about a little more than half a year ago, we were doing Sefer Shemot. And we discussed the Mishkan, its connection to Har Sinai. Remember the juxtaposition of them? But we had the unit, we identified the unit of the Mishkan that began in chapter 25 and went through the beginning of chapter 30, the first Dibor. Then we had the 6 extra Dibors that finished it up. But there was one big unit we called the Shechina unit. It began with donating the materials in chapter 25, Parshat Truma, with Va'asu Leibtag v'shachanti b'tocham. Then we were nice and organized. We had the vessels of the Kodesh Kodeshim, the Aron and the Kaporet, remember? The vessels in the Kodesh, Shulchan Menorah, which both have Avodat Tamid, the Shulchan and the Menorah, remember? Then we have the Oel Moed, the structure that houses the vessels. That's the Riot, the Kroshim, and the Parochet. Of course, they don't have Avodah because that's just the structure. Then we have the Chatzer, the outer courtyard, which has the Mizbach HaOlah and the Amudim around it. So basically there's the Avodat Tamid on the Mizbach HaOlah and on the Shulchan and Menorah. And then for some reason, right before we finish all the Chatzer, etc., we're ready for the Big Day Kuna for the Kohanim. But for some reason, right before we get to the Big Day Kuna, the clothing for the priests, we have a special section, two psukim, about the oil from the menorah, which just happens to be Parshat Tetzaveh. Now, the oil for the menorah should be, I'll show you in a minute, belongs right here with the menorah. For some reason, I took the Avodat Tamid, which should be mentioned with the menorah. We'll see the Shulchan mentions the Avodat Tamid by the Shulchan. The menorah, we save it for here. And I want to juxtapose it to the Big Day Kuna. I'll show you why the chapter division messed up on this one. From the Big Day Kuna, we have the 7-day inaugural ceremony, then the Avodat Tamid. So I want to point out that my key goal I want to get to now is to show that the main Avodat Tamid indoors will be the menorah. The menorah will be more important than the Shulchan and the Mizbach Torah. I want to put primacy to the Avodat Tamid of lighting the menorah and to explain why. So I'm already seeing in Chumash, through its structure, we're making a big deal about the oil for the menorah. So what I have to do now, I'll ask your what do we call it? Your indulgence? What's it? For whatever the word is. I have to share a Hebrew Tanakh that only has Hebrew, but you see the Parshiot. And if you have a current Tanakh, but I talked to the guy who does the Torah app. There's a Torah app, not Sefaria. He used to work for Sefaria. Guy Josh, I saw him on Shabbat. I was in. He's visiting, but he's a computer genius. But he's going to get me. He has he does all these. He's the guy behind all these apps. You know, he works with it. He knows the databases and everything. I told him I need a Koran Tanakh. I need a Tanakh, not that for Koran, but I need where you just see Parshiot and the Psukim are on the side, and it's not just chapter by chapter. I always have to go chapter by chapter. I want to be able to, like I do with the Chumash. So Mir Hashem, within a couple of weeks, we'll get it working. Now back to we need to share from. Where are we? We want here. Here's a regular Chumash, and put this to the side. And we are, to make it a lot smaller, that's easy to do, okay? And we are in the book of Shemot, and we have, okay, here. Shemot Perek Chafei, just to refresh your memory. Remember Parshat Truma, Vayikra Truma, collecting money, remember V'asur Mikdash, this begins the unit. There's a Dibor right here that goes all the way till the beginning of chapter 30. We have the Aron, which doesn't have an Avodat Tamid, but it's the Aron that with the Luchot. Remember? V'noati l'chasham b'bnei Yisrael. I'm going to meet you there and speak to you from the Kruvim. Every time I command you. That's going to continue. That'll make Har Sinai continuous. God spoke to Moshe on Har Sinai. Will continue to speak to him from the Kodesh Kodeshim, from on the Kappa the Kaporet. Now, v'asit shulchan v'natat al shulchan lechem panim lefanai tamid. Remember, there's 2 kelim indoors in this unit. The Shulchan and the Menorah. We have the Aron and the Kodesh Kodeshim. In the Kodesh, we have Shulchan and Menorah. Remember, Mizbach Torah, we save for later. We have, make the Shulchan detailed. The last line, V'natat al Shulchan lechem panem l'fnei tamid. What should be for the Menorah? V'asit Menorah zav tahor. What should be the last line? You know, light the Menorah every day. But it's missing here. It says what? It says, make the Nerot and light them, etc. That how they should light. but it says here's how to build it, but then say when to light it yet. Right? Now, what I'm getting at is that we're not going to get this to Parshat Tetzaveh till 3 chapters later, but the detail of how to light the menorah with the Shem and Zayit should be right here, but it's not. Chapter 26 is the Chatzer. Okay, there's no Avodat Tamid in the Chatzer. Now, as soon as we get to chapter 27, we have the Mizbach Atzei Shittim. Again, here's how to build it, but we're going to save the Avodah till later. We'll get the Avodah in a minute later on. Then we have the Chatzer, the Mishkan, which is technical. And at the very end of chapter 27, which should really be chapter 28, here we go. V'ata tetzaveh b'nei Yisrael, b'chu elecha Shem and Zayit zachetit lamor ladot ner tamid. Now, this section, my claim is, belongs back in chapter 25 with the menorah. But for some reason, I'm saving it and juxtaposing it to the Kohanim, to the Big Day Kuna, to the clothing of the Kohen. We'll talk about this later on. Aaron has to light it. Mi'erev ad boker. Here we go again. Lifnei Hashem. From Bnei Yisrael. And then chapter 28 is going to be bring Aaron and Vasita b'dei kodesh Aaron achicha. And of course, there's the word tamid is many times in the b'dei kuna. Just a couple of examples. What do we have? Here. V'nasa Aaron et shmot b'nei Yisrael b'chol shana mishpat libo v'hod zikron lifnei Hashem tamid. And then ונתת כל שם מלכות משמרים בתומים, ונשא אהרון את משפט בני ישראל ליבו, לפני השם תמיד. And we get to the Me'il, I'm sorry, and the tzitz. The tzitz better be there. If not, I messed up. Find me tamid by the tzitz. Kodesh v'abdab til tchelet, v'emetzach Aaron. Here we go. V'ya al mitzchot tamid. Okay? The tzitz, tamid. Ratzon lifnei Hashem. So we have Avodat Tamid, the Kohanim themselves, that the Bagrim, their clothing, their official clothing also has an element of Tamid on them because they're always serving, because they represent the Jewish people in front of God. There are liaisons to God, and they themselves are always have to be there all the time, representing the Jewish people. Remember the Choshen with the 12, V'nasa Aaron et Mishpat b'nei Yisrael libo lifnei Hashem Tamid. Now we have that tamid. Then we have the inaugural ceremony in Perek Chavtet. Okay, here's what we do it, and that's a whole long thing. And when the inaugural ceremony is over, the 7 days of Miluim with the Chatat Olam, and we talked about making them Kohanim and the Ela Miluim, then we have the Korban Tamid. So the Korban Tamid ends the unit. We have these beautiful summary psukim. We'll go over them again in a minute about the Shekhinah. And only after that's all over, then we get the Mizbach Toret, which will make the Mizbach Toret special, but separate from what I call the Shekhinah unit. Now I can go back to, after doing that, you'll appreciate the source sheet, hopefully, if I didn't confuse you too much. Okay, here's our source sheet now. Put this up and to the side, okay. Look at the table we did. Vasuli Mikdash v'Shachanti up on top, in the beginning. Nice and organized, the vessels inside, the Ol Moed, the Chatzer, everything organized. This oil on the menorah out of place, but juxtaposed to the Kohanim over here. The 7th day, then the Yolat Tamid, at the very end is the Yolat Tamid, and then our summary psukim. Now I can read the summary psukim, nice and organized. Okay? Yolat Tamid, I want to show you how central the Yolat Tamid is to the Shekhinah. I'm to say that again because it's my key point. I want to prove to you what I showed you thematically with the textual parallel. I want now a structural parallel, how central the Yolat Tamid is to the idea of Shekhinah. Of Shekhinah and Har Sinai, you can't miss Shekhinah and Har Sinai, correct? And the Shekhinah is going to dwell in the Mishkan. Remember how the parallels between Mishkan and Har Sinai, that was the big thing we did in the second half of Shemot. The Korban Tamid is going to be the daily Korban that reminds us of the connection between the Mishkan and Har Sinai. Watch how perfect this. Olat Tamid L'Dorotechem, Petach Ol Moed, Lifnei Hashem, Asher Yivei Lecha Sham Ledeber Lecha Sham. That connects us. This Olat Tamid is in front of the Ol Moed, where we meet God. God will continue speaking to us. Remember, Har Sinai is hearing God talk to us. God continues to talk to us, to communicate with us through the Mishkan. And that's the place we learn Torah, study Torah, go to the rabbis and ask questions. V'no'adati shama, I'm going to meet the children of Israel there. Therefore, Ohel Moed, v'nitash bichvodi. That will sanctify it. With the Kvod Hashem like we have Sinai. Now that we have the main connection between the people of Israel and the Korban Tamid and the Kodesh Kodeshim, now we have the liaison in between. Therefore, V'kidashit Ohel Moed, the whole tent that surrounds it, and the Mizbeach, we put the Korban on, and Aron Banav HaKedesh Chayli, that's everything we had in chapters 25, 26, 27, 28. Then, what's the grand finale? V'shachanti b'toch b'nei Yisrael v'iti Lam Elohim. Got it? V'shachanti. Remember, I'll make this real small for a second. Someone can, if Rabbi Jay's on, you can do a mute. I think we're okay. Remember, V'shachanti, can I make it a little smaller? Smaller. Here we go. V'shachanti, you see that? V'shachanti, that whole unit. Okay. Then V'yadu, now I can make it bigger again. That should be crystal clear now. Then V'yadu, if you know what that means, to understand, to internalize. Ki ani Hashem Elokechem. Don't tell me that's not Har Sinai. Asher hotzeitem etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim. That's the opening line of the Dibrot, isn't it? Of Aseret Dibrot, which is on the Luchot. But I took you out of Egypt, l'shochni b'tocham, ani Hashem Elokechem. So I'm pointing out why the Olat Tamid is so central to Har Sinai and to the whole theme of the Mishkan. Now, don't be surprised for a minute that when Chazal learned Tefillah is keneged what? The Korban Tamid. Remember, why do we daven Shachrit and Mincha every day? It's keneged the Korban Tamid. It's not a technicality, it's fundamental. On a thematic level, it's the whole point. On a regular basis, every day in the morning and the evening, remember Har Sinai and your commitment to be God's people. And once I understand that's the theme in the Mikdash, I understand that's the theme of Tefillah when you come to the Beit Knesset. Now I want to explain why the menorah is more important than the Mizbach Torah. Why? Because after this whole unit is over, we did this last year, I'll just summarize it. After I have my Shekhinah unit, oh, by the way, now we need a Mizbach Torah. What was the idea? Because in theory, we're not worthy of encountering God because we're an Am Kshei Oref. In theory, anyone entering the vicinity of God should not survive. I need protection from that encounter. And therefore, now that I have a Mikdash with Shekhinah, I need protection from the Shekhinah. Therefore, I need a Mizbach Torah, which will form a buffer between the Mizbech on the outside and God on the inside. Remember, in the middle thing? That's the buffer like in Har Sinai, the Anan. And on a regular basis, we have the Anan Ktoret separating between Am Yisrael, represented by the Mizbech HaChitzon, by the outdoor Mizbech Dolat Tamid, and the Aron with the Luchot and Kruvim, Brit, on the inside. Now, once a day now, the Kohen has to go and light the menorah. But if the Kohen enters the Kodesh, that's God's presence is there, that's dangerous. Therefore, in order to light the menorah, what's the Kohen need to do? He needs protection. Now, I want to prove that to you from the Psukim. It'll be crystal clear now. Where are we? Here's our source sheet back. Now we can make it. After the Shekhinah unit is over, remember? Then make a Mizbach Torah and all the details how to make it. Look how wordy it is, but how important it is where we place this Mizbach Torah. Take a look. This Mizbach Torah is the buffer in front of the Parochet. Remember? Same word as Kaporet. Lifnei Kaporet, which is on the Aron Haidut, Asher Bedach Hashama. That's where I'm going to meet you. I need protection and the buffer area in front of the Kodesh. Okay? Viktei Aron Alav. Remember this idea, we'll need it for the Shulchan as well. But it's Lifnei Haidut. Lifnei Parochet, Asher Aron Haidut, Lifnei Kaporet. It's protecting us and preparing us for God's abode in the Kodesh Kodeshim. Now, Aaron brings on it Ktoret every morning, baboker, when? When Aaron goes in to clean the menorah in the morning, Lativaten wrote, he has to bring Ktoret to enter. Uvalot Aaron nerot ben arbaim yaktirana. Ktoret tamid, here we go. Tamid, difnei Hashem adorotechem. So Ktoret tamid is just as tamid as a menorah, but it's secondary. I'm doing all this to show how important the menorah is. Both the Mizbach Torah and the menorah need Avodat Tamid. I want to say the Avodat Tamid and the Torah is secondary to the menorah because there's a linkage. Why do I need Torah? So I can light the menorah. I'm not lighting the menorah so I can bring Torah. God doesn't need Torah. God needs his people. We need to visit God. We need to enter the Kodesh, but in order to enter, we need protection.
And we need Pitum HaKatoret when we conclude Musaf every
Because
Shabbat.
we're about to do a job. We hope to encounter God in our day-to-day lives, so we need Ktoret as we go out when we leave Shul to protect us from the Shekhinah, if we're worthy. Now, so Ktoret tamid lifnei Hashem l'dorotechem. Look up the sources why. I mean, the reason. You know why Ashkenazim don't say Enke Eloheinu every day? Because Nusach Svart says it. Israel, most people say it, but Ashkenazi don't say Enke Eloheinu every day, because it says when you do the Ktoret, if you make one little mistake in the Ktoret, you're Chayv Mitah. It's death penalty. So if you don't read it properly, it's like not breaking it properly. So you don't want to mess with it. So don't bother trying. So Ashkenazim are very realistic. We're not going to say it properly. If you do it right. Now, if you know when Sfardim daven, they really take the davening much more seriously, and they say everything. They don't just mumble through it. It's, Pitam, it wasn't said to add a Kaddish to Rabbanan. The poll mostly would say, I have to say Kaddish, so I need to say something so I can say Kaddish. But that's not why we have Pitam Aktoret. Now, by the way, I was in Shul, I was in Efrat for Shabbat. So the Shul I spoke at, they're all Americans there, but they're all Olim from thing. So the Shul is all the people live on the street called Pitam Aktoret. But the Pitam Aktoret, and then there's Nataf and I forgot, but they're missing Chabad. But it's at the bottom of the hill. But the top of the hill is Rechov HaMenorah and Shem and Zayit. If you know Efrat, the Zayit, it's called the Shem and Zayit. So I explained to them the reason why the Menorah and Shem and Zayit are on the top of the hill and the Pitam Torah is lower there, because the Menorah is much more important than the Torah. And they took me seriously. They said, did they really ask you when they designed an neighborhood? I told them they just had Ruach HaKodesh.
Sorry, did you just say that that Ashkenazim don't say Ketoret in the morning, the Shachrit?
Am I right? Where's Rabbi J? In America, don't Ashkenazim?
You are correct. You are correct. Nusach Ashkenaz does not say it, only on Shabbos.
Only on
Thank
Shabbos,
you.
yeah.
Right.
When they have time. In Israel, most people do say it, or they don't. It's in the siddur. They wrap up the tefillin or reading something or checking their messages by then. Now and that's why in Chutzlar, that's why there's logic of not saying it. Now, I got off track. I'm sorry. Go back to my thing. So the Torah Tamid, my point is the Torah is secondary to lighting the menorah, and that's my point. When you bring the Torah, Biteron Alav Torah Bativot Nerot, when he goes in, and when it goes in the morning to clean it, goes in the evening to light it. But again, Torah Tamid Lifnei Hashem L'Otechem. Now we have once a year you need Karnot on, what do you call it? For Medam Chatati Kippurim, but that's the law of Yom Kippur we get to in chapter 16. So again, the Mizbach Torah is outside the Shekhinah unit, okay? It's connected to the Kohanim lighting the menorah. It's on the axis between the outside and the inside, okay? And of course, once you're Kapara, that was our conclusions from before. And we had the same wordplay with the Parochet. Now, we did this, I just copied it from last year's source sheet. Remember, I just showed you the parallel between Har Sinai and the Mishkan. So God speaks to Moshe on Rosh Har, and the Kohanim on the mountain, and they see God. And on the Mizbeach, we bring Olot and Shlamim, and the nation's there. But the Mizbeach, so in the Mishkan, we have the nation and the Chatzer, but the Mizbeach, the Kohanim and the Ol Moed, lighting the Menorah and Shulchan. Now, what makes the Menorah so important? What's the Mikdash supposed to remind you of? Why, you tell me, what is it about the Menorah that relates to Har Sinai? We don't have a Menorah at Har Sinai. But I want to explain, what does the Menorah do?
Light.
It gives light, remember? It shines, it illuminates, doesn't it? It gives light. Remember in every, what do you call it? Every Hanukkah, what do you call it? Or Havdalah party, the idea of lighting candles, giving light. The idea of, now the theme of light has been a big theme in Chumash ever since day one. Because what does light enable you to do, thematically? Or enables you to perceive God. You can't see God, you can perceive God. Remember, in creation, on day one or is not or of the sun and the moon. It can't be, because that's not till day 4. What do Chazal say? God took the or of day one and did what with it? He put it into Kenizi, he put it into safe holding till when? He said Latid Lavo. Not for Olam Haba, Latid Lavo. I think Latid Lavo is Har Sinai. But in nature, God makes nature in day one. Nature enables you to perceive God. You can't see God, you can perceive God. With proper education, you can study nature and find God in nature. You can find your connection to God through nature, but you need the right spec. You need the vision. You need the right type of glasses to be able to perceive God. And you can't see, you can perceive. But I see the or is the ability to see God. What enables us to see God? The Torah. Remember? Torah Kiner mitzvah the Torah or. So the idea of teaching Torah, the idea of Torah is not just to receive the Torah, but to teach the Torah. Therefore, laying the menorah of the Kohanim, it's the Kohanim's job to teach Torah. It's their job to teach. Therefore, thematically, when the Kohanim light the menorah, they're basically saying it's our job to teach Torah, for Torah to emanate. And remember the four directions, emanating, going outside? From the Mikdash, we have to enlighten everything around us. Therefore, my point is the job of the Kohanim, because their job is to teach Torah, symbolically, when the Kohanim light the menorah, they're reminding themselves of the main job. Their job is to teach Torah. For Torah to keep going, it has to be taught and interpreted and applied in every generation, every situation. And you see that's what Birkat Kohanim is going to be about. Because what the Kohanim do, Birkat Kohanim, what brings blessing? Keeping the mitzvot for the Torah brings blessing. The Kohanim bless the people every day, that God should bless them. But the blessing comes with Ya'ir Hashem Panav Elecha. Remember in Birkat Kohanim? God's light has to shine upon us. Okay, we'll do this next week when we get the Rosh Hanukkah theme. We'll talk about the menorah itself. But the idea of menorah and Birkat Kohanim we'll do next week. Now, we're going to run out of time in a minute, so let me go back to finish up the source sheet. Where are we? That was our little thing. Okay, so that was I have to go back now to where we were before, which I skipped. Back to before this. Okay. Now I have to go back to Sefer Vayikra. Remember, we're supposed to be learning Sefer Vayikra, aren't we? Now, in Vayikra, so again, we see a connection between or of creation and the theme of creation and revelation, both creation and revelation in the Mishkan. It reminds us of God, the God creator, and God choosing us to serve him. I think the or is more about creation, and the Olat Tamid is more about revelation, but they're all interrelated. Now, where else do we find this Avodat Tamid in Sefer Vayikra? For some reason, it's a great quiz question. Most people don't realize it. In Perek Chav Gimel, we have the Moadim, don't we? Moadei Hashem. All in Perek Chav Gimel. You get to Perek Chav Daled, and all of a sudden we have things that belong in Parshat Truma. I'll show you. I'll share my screen, and I'll do it from a regular Chumash first. We have to go to Sefer Vayikra over here. And just to remind yourself, Perek Chav Gimel, for some reason, starts with Shabbat. Remember Moadei Hashem, but first Shabbat, and then Eila Moadei Hashem, Pesach, Chag HaMatzot, Sfirat HaOmer. Remember, we're doing agricultural, the Aviv, and then the grain season, Chag HaKatzir, then Chag HaAsif. Count the 7 weeks of Katzir, what we call Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Not that. Then we get to Sukkot. And then Elam Modei Hashem, and we finished that whole unit. We went through the whole agricultural cycle. Now, what's interesting is we go first the grain season, and then we have the fruit season, and then we have Sukkot is the end of the fruit harvest, isn't it? What's the last fruit that's harvested? The Zayit. If you know Israeli news, there's all these things. It's now from Mesik HaZeitim. Now they're collecting all the olive trees, and that's why there's all these issues in the West Bank that you should know about. Now, that's all in Perek Chav Gimel. Look what happens right away in Perek Chav Daled. A copy-paste. It's again, I call this Shvi syndrome. It's the end of the parsha, no one pays attention. Listen carefully. Vaydaber Hashem Moshe lemor, Tzava b'nei Yisrael v'yichu elech Hashem ezayit katit lamor, ladot ner tamid. Isn't that a copy-paste from Parshat Tetzaveh? We know Parshat Tetzaveh because it's the first Aliyah. We don't know this because it's the last Aliyah. But it's the same thing. What's it doing here? We had that already. Okay. Am Norah Torah Yaroch et Hanerot Lifnei Hashem Tamid. Avodat Tamid on the menorah. And then Belachachta Solid Bafita Shemesei Chalot, etc. That's called Lechem Apanim. B'Yom HaShabbat Yarchenu Lifnei Hashem Tamid. Meit Hashem B'nei Yisrael Brit Olam. We'll talk about the word Brit Olam in a second. V'Yitalun Lechum Makom Kadosh Yikadosh Humu Lo Misha Hashem Chok Hashem. And then we get to the story of the Mekalel. But these two parshiot clearly belong in Parshat Truma, don't they? Truma Tetzaveh. They're copied from Truma Tetzaveh. For some reason, the detailed Lechem Apanim, which only mentioned in Parshat Truma, is detailed here, and Perach Avdallah is over here. What's doing in Vayikra? We have to get to again. That'll be our goal for next week. What are these doing in Sefer Vayikra? Why with the Moadim at the end of Vayikra, even though they belong in Truma? I mean, in our bigger theme, it makes a lot of sense because Shmot is how to build it. Vayikra is how to use it. This is how to use it. But why do we save this section for at the end of the Chagim, after the Moadim? So it relates to agriculture and nature, but notice these. But again, I'm pointing out what's the main Avodat Tamid? The menorah and the shulchan. The menorah every day, Erev and Boker, shulchan, Shabbat, Yom HaShabbat, Yom HaShabbat. That reminds us of creation. Now, what are we doing? I want to go back to the theme of creation real fast and with this. When we talked about creation way back, we talked about God making man b'tzelem Elokim. Man has to recognize he's different than animal. Remember, man b'tzelem Elokim is the difference between man and animal. And man has creativity, and he has to recognize that God gave him that ability to be creative and use it to do good and not to do bad. We discussed that when we did Bereshit a long time ago. Now, if I want things to typify humanity and how we're different than animals, so what makes man different than animal? Again, you can give different theories of how to define it, but clinically proven is that humans make light at night and animals don't. We invented a candle, didn't we? We're the only living thing that makes light at night, and we do it through industry. But instead of sleeping all night and just, or whatever we do all night, we're up all night learning Torah, playing cards, whatever we do, but we made light at night. And the idea of taking olive oil and then making a wick and making a candle, there's a whole mission about it, people read Friday night, that it typifies human ingenuity and human industry and using it for good. Now, if I can use that light to learn Torah, well, that's amazing. But I can see God I can see God at night, not just in the day. By studying Torah at night, that's what light enables me to do. Similarly, domesticating wheat, that's uniquely human, wasn't it? Domestication of wheat, and that's going to be the chalot. And we show off our chalot. But in the Mikdash, in the Kodesh, we have two things that typify civilization and humanity, and how we're different than animals, is our ability to give light and make light, and making bread. And we show that off, and that reminds us of creation and God's giving us the ability to be creative. Now, that's on day 1 and day 3. Now we need day 6. On day 6, God makes man with animals. Of all the animals that man domesticated, the best one is going to be the lamb, because what does lamb give us? It gives us also clothing, and clothing is unique to man. Eating animals, cooking them, and processing our food from animals and making our staple, that's also uniquely human, the whole idea of livestock, etc. So all the things we do on a daily basis in the Mikdash all remind us about Tzelem Elokim. And that's probably more important than anything else. Why dafka kvasim? Remember kvasim, we get clothing from there. We get milk from there. We get meat. And we get more kvasim. We make a living. And we can sell them and buy cars. We can buy cars and things, whatever we buy with our livestock. Ask Yaakov. Remember, he did a good job on it. Kind of in trouble. But he got out of it somehow. Either way,
Sonecha.
Yeah.
Ashtarot Sonecha. The root is Ashir.
Explain that again. The shir of
Ashtarot
Sonecha. Yeah. By the way, Ashtar, that's
the root is Ashir. Even though there's a bit of a dispute about that, but it seems to me clear.
People claim those are names of gods of gods in Never Yarden, but that's not for this group.
No, in the Tanakh, every time it mentions Avodah Zarah, it says Baalim and Ashtarot together. Each one of them, Baalim being male power, and Ashtarot and Ashtarot being female reproductive power.
Okay. No, I agree with you totally. I just want to bring the those. I mean, we're countering those Avodah Zarah, but that's too complicated for the Vayikra uses those words. Same with bow and things like that, but we'll keep it we'll keep on the regular side. But that was the goal of today's share, to show the avodat tamid, which relates to our daily tefillah and coming to shul, etc. It's, tefillah keneged korbanot. When you study how they're presented, they beautifully ties back to creation and the theme of Tzelem Elokim and God being the creator and our ability to perceive God through creation and using our creativity in the service of God and doing good with it. At the same time, remains of revelation and the idea of Ish Tamid that can't be extinguished, our eternal connection to God and our eternal need to be His covenantal partner and our eternal chosenness. So the idea of Tamid is always going to be important. So it sounds very technical when you learn Vayikra. I'm trying to find meaning in the book and how it helps us understand our day-to-day life and our show going. Okay, Rabbi J, let me check that. There's a couple things in the chat.
Menachem, while you're checking
Yeah,
in.
very good. You put the J Yedidia Tzion. Okay, that's the name. Okay. And that can be stamped. Yeah, very good. Yeah, go ahead.
One more thing before you check the chat. In reality, the Ketoret and the menorah are linked. You can't have one without the other because we're human beings.
For sure.
So it's not secondary. It's co-equal because without it, you can't light the menorah. So
but my point is, you're lighting the Torah so you can light the menorah. You're not lighting the menorah so you can light the Torah. You need Torah to light the menorah.
Absolutely.
But the goal is the menorah is the goal.
To get to that goal, you have
need the Torah. They're important. I'm not saying they're important, but the goal is giving light.
So let's say they're part.
Put it this way: the Torah is survival mode. The menorah is revival mode. How's that?
Okay. All right.
Menachem, I realized from your Dvar Torah, which is fantastic, that Eish Tamid parallels Yaakov, who's Ish Tam.
Oh, very, very cute. Very good. Ish Tamid. You just need the Yodala there, and you have the Tam Yid. Ish Tamid. Very good.
Thank you.
Okay. That's like how that goes to Ruth. I listened to your shit last night on Parsha about where you put the comma. Yeah, that was good. Yeah. So Gershon learned from you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Anyway, everyone have a good week.
Okay.
Okay. Announcements, Rabbi?
Benny Guzunay Tilim Beivrit, V'od Arba'im Dakot. Then all our regular 12 classes this week. So another 11 after every day. Tomorrow, Tamar Whiteman's series ends this week, but that's tomorrow at 11 a.m. in the morning. And like I mentioned in the beginning, our Chanukah Yom Ayun, please God, 2 weeks today, December 14th, 9:15 to 2:10 Eastern time. It will already be Chanukah time in Israel when we do it, so there'll be a real Chanukah Yom Ayun, first night of Chanukah. Okay, everybody, have a good week. Let's hear good news and all good things. Michal, anybody, you have your hand up? You want to say something? Or you did already, Michal.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's okay. Okay.
Okay.
All right, everybody. Shavua Tov. All the best. Okay. Be well.